So, welcome to the Enthinkment Circle, co-hosted by Ronnie Sailors and myself, David Bogie. We have a wonderful guest today, and I'm going to let Ronnie do the introductions, and he's going to MC the session and run the breakouts. All right, Ronnie, go.
Yeah. So Kassandra Rebello is a doctoral student at Washington State University. We've been working together along with Roy Sotheby for a number of years now. She's got two kids, and that is a very important and valuable part of her life. She cares very deeply about authenticity and getting deeper than the academic surface level of like what legitimates and is certainly one of the strongest thinkers that I've encountered. So I would like to hand it over to her. Hopefully, she can share where her thinking has brought her so far, and I'm sure we'll enjoy it.
Wow. Yeah, I have to say this was Ronnie forgot that he had invited me to this. So this is interesting. I'm very excited. I'm very confused and excited at the same time. Like, how did everyone get together and what's going on here? Even just moments before, I'm like, what am I talking about? What do you want me to talk about? So I'm gonna just take a plug from what he just said and kind of, I guess, talk about a little bit about how I got to where I am now with just rounding out the dissertation, but especially as it relates to kind of where I focus my desire to understand. And it does come from my roots, I guess. I started in academia quite literally because I didn't want to be a mother to my daughter at the time who said that you should go do something you really want to do and you should go do something that's really meaningful. And then I wasn't doing that myself. So that's how I got into academia. I knew nothing about academic research and thankfully very quickly latched onto Ronnie Sailors here and Roy Sotheby, who I'm assuming most of you guys know the work that he does. And yeah, so this has sort of just been a personal evolutionary journey and an academic evolutionary journey, very much so. And what Ronnie specifically wanted me to be here to talk about is kind of around this idea of um, cultural value. So my dissertation is, to give you an idea, is titled "Kneeling in Time: Constructing of Cultural Entrepreneurial Identity." So, what the dissertation looks at is basically how a cultural entrepreneur manages tensions between authenticity and legitimacy. Through the analysis, what emerged was, to the point about chronotopes, was that very commonly the cultural resonance of such identity claims came from chronotopes, or what I believe are chronotopes. So I think this is where the discussion should sit. Though there are many other working pieces of this, and I love going down rabbit holes. So if something else is piquing your interest, please take me along. I think maybe I'll share my screen, Ronnie, if that's allowed, just so you can have the one slide as the reference frame in case it's easier for you guys to follow along. But before I do that, I'm taking a note from a great teacher that I had growing up in this world of academia, and you're not going to see it till I'm done talking about it. So the premise of this is basically that I, through the analysis, sort of identified the narrative structures that BAKHTIN had presented in ways that were, I feel like, more accessible, more practically applicable, as we might understand them in modern times. And so that's what the core of the findings was derived from, is sort of identifying these Bakhtinian-like structures and discussing them in ways that might be more accessible for understanding. So the first is the romantic adventure. And I guess I should back up a second. What I did was I tried to group the chronotopes by way of like what they emphasized. So, for example, the diamond in the rough, which is a conceptual comparison to a romantic adventure, and the growth mindset, which is a conceptual comparison to an everyday adventure. Both of these chronotopes I called journey-based frames, and they're journey-based frames because the elements of the narrative structure house an entire sequence rather than, for example, the individual frame, which is a chivalric adventure where there's more emphasis on an individual. So I have these frames, and I'm not going to say them all before I present it, but basically, I have the two journey-based frames, which is the romantic adventure and the everyday adventure. I have individual frames, which is the legendary martyr and the identity stage. I have collective frames, which these collective frames were what appeared to be the most influential frames used in the media discourse analysis that I conducted. And those are the essential community, which is Bakhtin's folkloric and idyllic life, historic ideation, which is Bakhtin's historic inversion, and then the oppositional frames were the other dominant chronotopes involved in the media discourse analysis. The analysis I did was able to capture both sides of the discourse. So I analyzed all of the media that was presented that from Kaepernick himself, Colin Kaepernick, and then I also analyzed all of the commentary. So this was like commentary in response to media videos, commentary, literally comments on social media. So every form of audience interactivity was also captured. And this is where I saw the oppositional frames, which the Bakhtinian comparison is the rogue clown fool and the Rabelaisian purge. These I call the institutional traitor and the revolutionary struggle. So four types of frames: journey frame, individual frame, collective frame, and oppositional frame. Housing very specific types of narratives and what they look like. And then the final piece of this analysis that I think helps explain why these chronotopes are so contextually sensitized is the fact that I used a rhetorical history lens. So the argument is that in the paper that I present is that rhetorical history is the way that narratives are positioned within chronotopes to construct cultural identity. So now, if Ronnie's giving me permission,
Could
I
be.
think, yeah, I think I'm going to share
You're a
this.
co-host. You got every permission in the world.
Okay. So this is definitely not exhaustive. I was just talking with Ronnie before we got on about how I have, I think, really good sort of story-like examples of each one of these. But basically, this is sort of the summary version of that, which is pretty aligned with how Bakhtin had presented them. I think the important contribution for scholars who study these chronotopes, I think, is really the contextual sensitivity that this analysis provides. So I'm describing specific identity narratives that indicate positioning in these specific chronotopes. So I feel that was a lot. So I'm gonna take a pause and have a party while somebody asks me a really difficult question.
And David, and then Brian.
So, how did you come up with these new classifications? And I want to say I think it's amazing and wonderful. Um, the trouble with folklore, because I was in it at UCLA, um, is the language often defeats people in our fields, organization and conversation coaching, etc., from getting into it, you know. So your new classifications seem much more accessible. So I just want to know how you came up with it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question that I love to be able to say. It was grounded in the data. So, what was consistently found when I was looking for the structures, so I guess the first step is how did I find the structures? And the structures were identified using indicators of chronotopic positioning with rhetorical history. So, what that looked like, and I could present if I can scoot over. I'll provide these so you can get an example. Um, Let me see if I can stop sharing and share something different. But basically, I looked at historical analogies, narrative trajectories, and temporal positioning. So those were in my methods. These were the three indicators of the chronotopic positioning of the rhetorical history in the data. So as I was looking for, to give you an example, and I didn't even tell you guys the context. That's like the best part. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe it's not the best part. It depends on if you guys know. But the study is on Colin Kaepernick and his media discourse surrounding his kneeling protests against systemic oppression and police brutality in the country. So he kneeled during the national anthem, for those of you that don't know, in 2016, and a whole mess of discourse happened as a result. Um, and obviously, the 100-page dissertation gets into all the nitty-gritty details of it all. But I think to show you what this looks like, I can just show you one of the um, findings here. And I think the one that maybe helps explain a lot of the to your question, Dave, is the layered chronotopic positioning. So what I present here is because for people that don't study chronotopes, trying to explain how they're all overlapping and always happening and all framing, it's very difficult. So I slowly introduced the idea of layered chronotopic positioning in the dissertation. So in the beginning, I'm not saying that this is happening while this is happening while this is happening, and this talks about this and this. I introduce it at the end, my very last chapter of findings, and let me share here so you guys can see the example. But that is how I got to the labels that you see in the table I presented. So just for one example here, history is happening right before our eyes in the top right box for you guys to follow along. Many didn't want Rosa Parks to remain at the front of the bus. Many didn't want MLK to fight for civil rights. Many didn't want our leaders to fight for us, but they did. Fast forward to today, and Colin is following in the footsteps of those who came before him, continuing the fight. Colin, you have the legacy of your ancestors on this journey. So you see, I explain here as well. This is historic ideation, Bakhtin's historic inversion, through temporal positioning by citing present as past. Right here, history is happening before our eyes. Historic analogy by referencing previous civil rights resistors. And then the narrative trajectory falling, situating Kaepernick within the civil rights movement. That's the narrative trajectory. And then Colin as a follower of his ancestral legacy, indicating historic ideation and legendary martyr. So legendary martyr is the chivalric adventure. So what I'm trying to do here, and then we see like this is the third part of the dissertation, shaping legitimacy and authenticity. Legitimacy evaluations are shaped this way, authenticity evaluations are shaped in this way, all using this one illustrative quote. So I hope that that answers your question about where I got them. It's a two-part. The first is identifying that through rhetorical history. This is one of the common ways that we get that cultural resonance. And then by using these indicators as indications for the chronotopic positioning of rhetorical history. Brian. Oh, sorry, Roy. Ronnie, you're supposed to say Brian. Thanks, David. By the way, please call me Cassie. I don't think I've heard Cassandra. Like, nobody called me that.
Yeah, it's just what it says on Zoom, which is why.
I know. I should change it somehow. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for the hearts there, David. Brian.
I'd be curious as you explore the historical chronotopes and how they influence and they've evolved and you've laid them all out. Do you think there's any predictive value in how we experience life today and what might come next based on the research?
Yeah, that's a good question that I think it's hard to say because I don't think anyone knows anything about any time past this time. But I do think my hope in my academic career is to try to sort of um, to chart on that trajectory. So I just did a brain dump to Ronnie this morning about cosmological moments in time, which is this idea that, like, so right here, this is, could be considered, right? Like, there's one of these alternate findings that I talk about where basically the entire trajectory of the Kaepernick discourse was put to fire because at the time the presidential candidate for the Republican Party, Donald Trump, made some really, really aggressive swinging sort of commentary in response to the protest, which actually was, I believe, this is what I say, and like somebody should do some research on this, to your point, that is what sort of ignited what eventually became the Take a Knee movement. I don't think it was actually him kneeling. I think it had to do with certain specific influential responders to the kneeling event. And so I think I would like to try to study those. I'm calling them institutional shifts. They're kind of cyclical patterns of course, in my language, because I think everything's about legitimacy and authenticity of like bringing in authenticity and then, oh no, we need to tighten it up, and bringing in the authenticity, and oh no, we need to tighten it up. So I would love to be able to get at the source of like how and why these institutional shifts occur, which is the research question that I just presented to Ronnie about these institutional shifts or cosmological moments in time. Do I think that this work does that? Perhaps not, but I do fully believe that this opens the space for people to understand that there are only always inherent tensions in any one dominant discourse, and that maybe this can be one mechanism that we use to try to better understand. Thank you, Brian, for your question.
David.
Well, I always have questions. So just so you know that this is the Enthink Circle and um, dedicated to Louis Ralph Pondy's conflict resolution. And he said basically he thinks organizations are anarchies, not cooperative systems. And now we're seeing a world of anarchy. But I guess my question is, I've done some reading on it, but can you explain rhetorical history? Because I think it's a very different kind of history, and that might help sort of pivot what we're going to ask you next.
Yeah, well, not um this is not my I'm not the expert, but I think I mean simplistically, rhetorical history is the strategic use of the past. It has been previously cited as being used for organizational change, being used to construct identities, being used to rewrite the past, so to speak, being used to collectively forget, being used in all sorts of ways to make what it's performative. So to make in all sorts of ways what we think really happened before today be different from maybe what really happened before today based on whatever our intended outcome is, right? So it's very vague and wide in that way, but basically, yes, it's a version of historical representation that may or may not be based on factual occurrences in the past.
Got it. Now you are the expert.
Okay. Why don't we do a breakout room here and allow people to talk about sort of what they heard and what they're thinking, um, and come up with maybe a few more questions unless something's popping to mind right now. Okay. We will form, say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's do 4 dyadic breakout rooms this time, and we'll have one person to chat with. Does that sound good? Cool. All right, it'll just be sort of random here. Oh, 1, 2. Did I miss? Oh, because okay, actually, create rooms. I'm going to create 3 breakout rooms, and for whatever reason, that's going to put us 2 per. And it looks like I'm not in any of them, and that's okay. I'll open those rooms, and we can join, and everyone can chat, and then come back with what we're thinking about. Yeah. All right. And then, David, it looks like you and I think, as hosts, are here.
We can join whatever room we want.
Yeah, for sure. And then,
Or you can send us there,
yeah, or we could chat right here.
Okay, she's really bright. That's awesome. I'm going to turn this off so we're not recording anything else.
Yeah.
In a break room with each other.
Yes, we broke that room all down. It's funny. Yeah, go for it, Ronnie. I'll let you do it.
Yeah. So let's see if we have Wanda. I know that you were chatting with Olivia, and unfortunately she had to go. Did you have something you would like to talk about?
Sure. And I think I took some good notes. Um, we both had adequate time to speak, so that was good. She just left.
Mhm.
So the idea of chron was it chronotopes,
Mhm.
Olivia was challenged in kind of getting her arms around that concept. And I identified with it, but I think through our discussion, I think Olivia was able to embrace it more through discussion. Um, the indicators of chromotopic positioning with historical history really identify with me. What I thought about, I have a group of African diasporans that are in Cameroon right now. And one of the videos they showed was going back through the door of no return. And I identified with the chronotopic concept because their ancestors left going through that door of no return on slave ships was pretty traumatic. So they're going back there generations later. They have returned, right? But the concept was you'll never return. So I see coming back as chronotopic positioning. That's how I see it. Repositioning to kind of get beyond all that negativity and trauma, because is it because Cassie referred to positive mindset? People like me who have that trauma in my genetics are always pushing towards getting to the chronotopic aspect of positive mindset. Olivia sees herself as being in disagreement with most people, because she's highly left brain, but she wants to help others that are stakeholders in organizations translate statistics into interpretations that they can understand. And I totally can understand her positioning, because I find myself, when I'm in groups, being adversarial to where others are. So we made a real connection there.
Thank you.
Can
Uh,
I respond to that?
well,
Sure.
let's yeah, if that's your preference, absolutely.
Well, I just love the conversation, and I think your comment about being adversarial, I feel like Paul and I might have been talking about that a little bit indirectly, but just the idea of contradiction and its like inherent existence in like humans and interconnection, right? Like any interaction we have. I was thinking about it. She resonated the love and gratitude thing because I think maybe the frame, the chronotopic stuff is hard to distill down into like I would say like a micro OB concept like love and gratitude. But I think that the essence of love and gratitude is something that can very much be positioned in the chronotopes as far as like how you can connect with people by using chronotopes and shaping this concept of love and gratitude. And this is one of the other future research ideas that I have talking about instead of using a rhetorical history lens, which maybe doesn't always fit the profile depending on which type of identity you want to construct or which type of meaning you want to convey, that instead you can just use an institutional frame. So if we think about what things institutionally symbolize gratitude and love, actions, behaviors, symbols, whatever it be, that we could use those to position ourselves in a way that conveys the meanings of love and gratitude without um without in some cases actually doing all the behaviors and all the actions, right? Because within an organization sometimes that can be really challenging, right? There's a lot of political barriers, there's a lot of legal barriers, there's a lot of human resource barriers. So I think I don't know if that's something to take back to her, but it's just something that as you're talking, I think about how it's not just like we talked about the rhetorical history, the literal history. It's not about just literal history or the rhetorical history. It's
Mhm.
about the cultural meaning that comes with the way that our stories are told, these specific references to already existing stories that evoke meanings of
Mhm.
love and gratitude or whatever it might be.
And
Thank
then
you.
that's
Thank
very cool.
you.
And then David has the definition here: literally time space, a unit of analysis for studying texts according to the ratio of nature and temporal and spatial categories represented. The distinctiveness of this concept, as opposed to most others' use of time and space in literary analysis, lies in the fact that neither category is privileged. They're utterly interdependent. The chronotope is an optic for reading texts as X-rays. And so thank you for sharing that, David.
You got it.
Yeah. So Sabine.
Thank you. We talked a lot about authenticity. And what it comes down to for me, and Brian, please correct me, in our discussion, we were wondering, it's like how do we establish authenticity? And how does this work, within like an institutional framework, like, social media and all of that, because I mean, people have agendas, and they already participate in certain social media activities that are self-chosen, So I mean, I guess the question is
Let me
how does
maybe
right?
I'll
I mean,
say it a little differently. I don't know. We were
okay,
talking about, okay, you're looking rhetorically, historically backwards. How do you measure the authenticity of people who are no longer with us? How do you
yes,
project what their feelings were?
yes.
If
Thank
that's
you,
where
Brian.
your research lived.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Sabine, I think you were about to summarize what you were saying as well. So could you do that?
Um,
Sorry
No,
if you
I mean,
lost
I
time.
think I agree, So, I mean, for us in our
Mhm.
discussion, it really hinged on, on authenticity because somebody has to establish that, who establishes and how, right? And as Brian said, how do we know that certain utterances were for the purpose, for instance, that we think they were when somebody is no longer around?
There we go. That makes sense to me. Thanks for that back and forth.
Yeah,
And thank you, Brian.
I mean, I think Ronnie and I were just talking about this in response to Dave's paper that he sent to Ronnie earlier this morning. So I think
Oh, okay.
I mean, I think this is all really relevant, and I think authenticity is difficult for me because I have always both considered myself and been considered as a very authentic person. So the question is the ultimate question, right? And I don't think a lot of people like the answer that I'm gonna give, but I think the answer is there's no establishing of authenticity to be happening. I think authenticity is only ever relatively considered based upon what we perceive as the internal and what we perceive as being aligned to some external that we define as an authentic thing, an authentic way, an authentic action, behavior, whatever. There are some very specific examples. Actually, I want to point to one, so maybe this will help explain. So there's one in the very beginning of this analysis that I have talked. He's talking about his brand endorsements. Colin Kaepernick is talking about his brand endorsements, and I cite it as a way to claim authenticity. It's part of the identity stage, so it's a public sort of meaning shaping activity for himself. And it says, I don't want to do things that don't fit who I am. I was wearing Beats by Dre 4 years before I had a deal. I used their product 2 years before we had a deal with them. All of the deals are things that fit me and that I have already been doing. So this is an example, of course, of temporal positioning, right? He's trying to say that like, oh no, this is like what was always happening and this is what's still happening and it's all, he's talking about it in an interview. But I think this gets at what we think when we think of authenticity. There are other conceptualizations, though, of authenticity that refer to like concepts being authentic. Like I think about like what is authentic Italian food? This is something that's very well studied is like authentic Italian food or like like is this yeah, authentic whatever. Is this an authentic Gucci bag, for example, right? Like is this are these authentic, right? This is the claim to some like referent ideal. So I think this gets at your point of who determines what authenticity is. And
Mhm.
I think it's only ever determined collectively and then to some degree that is established. However, that is only ever being established because at any time somebody can come and claim that that is no longer authentic or that is no longer this removal of our statues is actually part of an embodied rhetorical history paper that I'm working on, but the removal of all the American statues of like all the revered prominent US historical figures. This is the perfect example of to highlight your question that there is no real answer is that that can always be changed. So I think it's a sort of it reaches a collective momentum where we say like Muhammad Ali was authentic. He was authentic to his cause, he was authentic to his self, he was authentic to his mission, right? But we never know if at some later date someone's going to decide, no, look at this part of this story, and then use a different framing, chronotopic positioning, to actually destabilize that interpretation of authenticity. So that's what this dissertation does, is it really looks at that back and forth play. So I don't know, that doesn't really answer your question. It really says there is no answer, but I feel like that's the answer for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate that back and forth between Sabine and Brian. It's it's a very normal sort of sense-making question, right? And comes at this like feeling, how do I know what's actually there? And the way that BAKHTIN has us understanding the world is relational. So what's actually there is never something inside, right? It's always in a dialogue. So it's always relational, which then places the primacy of that which is real, not as like the material thingliness of authenticity within the being, but in its causal relation between. And that causality is then what makes something real. Anyway, I know David's looking for something cool out of uh, dialogic imagination. So that's like 4 essays, and some of them are pretty darn.
Paul, right?
It feels like David had something he wanted to say.
Go ahead, Paul. Then I'm gonna
Okay.
do my thing.
Oh,
Oh, no.
no, I was so intent on listening to everything that's going on. You held up the book and said the dialogic imagination. That's a mouthful.
You know what? We just had, sorry to interrupt you, Paul. We just had Spring Forward, didn't we?
Yes?
So Betty showed up just on time.
Oh,
She's in France.
so what time is it there?
1.
Oh, well, it's, yes. Oh, I forgot, in Europe, you didn't set your clocks yet.
No, not
yeah,
until
yeah.
March 30th. March
Yeah,
31st.
yeah. Okay. But it's
So-
good that you're here, Betty. Oh my goodness. Oh,
Yeah. This time last week, Sabine, I was sitting on a train that couldn't go anywhere. There was an unidentified object on the rail tracks. And so I thought I would turn you on from the train. But everybody was screaming and yelling, why are we stopped? So I gave up last week.
oh.
So it's 1 o'clock over there.
Yes.
Okay.
Which I
Well,
guess,
and where Ronnie is, and yeah.
yes,
and
1 here and 2 there in Las Cruces.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay. So you guys are saying goodbye.
Well,
No, Betty, we'll stay on and talk
Not
with you.
quite.
whoever
No.
can.
yeah,
No.
Betty, I would have loved for you to hear this. So Cass here is a doctoral student. She's working with chronotopes in studying Colin Kaepernick's kneeling and looking
Good
at
plan.
how rhetorical history is then, that is the strategic use of history is used to frame things in terms of various chronotopes and how the audiences are interpreting those chronotopes to generate the social value judgments of authenticity and legitimacy. So that's
the general picture. I'd like to know why you got interested in chronotopes, Kassandra.
Yes, I kind of said that in the beginning, but I think just way before academia, I have always been interested in understanding why people do what they do and why they are the way they are. So I think I'm more of a social, cultural anthropologist than I am of any other nature. And so I think I was fortunate enough to get introduced to Ronnie and Roy Suddaby very early in my career. Before I had a career, which technically I still don't have a career, but this is about to be my first publication. Woohoo! But But yeah, I think the chronotopes at first were very undigestible for a layperson such as myself, a PhD
Mhm.
student. And I think over the years of like evolving my capacity to understand how we shape our own existence and how we make sense of it and how we can convey it to others. The chronotopes kind of kept coming back, and I feel like the only way that I could connect with them, to be honest, is by doing this dissertation because
Yeah,
they are not digestible no matter how many times I read them over and read people's interpretations of them over. They're still not digestible to my own brain.
yeah.
So I think this was a sense-making exercise to allow me, like this is my foundation, to allow me to forever in the future of my research use chronotopes.
That's great. You know, that's one of the best reasons to do something. But I found the key to understanding the concepts that Bakhtin came up with by starting with why he did his original research on Rabelais before he did anything else. He was so fascinated with the ability of any of us to transform who we were for a day, for a festival, and from there, the chronotopes started to make sense because people take on different forms all the time, not just when they become um, party silly, you know. But I would always start with how Bakhtin saw Rabelais, which also takes up a lot of mind bandwidth, you know. But that's how he got started. Was David asking a question and his hand is up from that? Or David, okay.
That's an
Yeah.
interesting book. Ronnie and I have been talking about this Robley because I think those are the most interesting. I feel that they're the most indicative of exactly the chaos that is reality.
Yeah,
And
Yeah,
yeah.
I love it.
and I know I ran over Paul, but David is very excited to show you exactly why very deep reading of the source text is going to help illuminate things. So,
Uh-huh.
So
Mhm.
let's go back
thank you.
to authenticity because I think it takes us off track with Bakhtin. So Bakhtin is more, I think he's the ideal anti-narrative kind of writer. So I want
Mhm.
to defend why that is. First of all, just have a footnote about Rabelais. So if you go to Lyon, France, and you go to that hospital there, the old hospital, I forget the name of it, but you find a plaque for Rabelais right in the first floor of the hospital, you know, and Rabelais was a doctor, and he went all over Europe, and they would have these carnival-esque festivals every month, and some of them would last a day, a week, or 2 weeks. And people would dress in costumes. They would drink a lot. There'd be a lot of sex. There'd be a lot of things going on. It was a very, it was kind of like Bridgerton. Have you ever seen Bridgerton on Netflix? For example, the chronotope that's a biographical chronotope is not the biography of the person. That's kind of irrelevant. It's the maids, footmen, butlers take on these rich people, rich clerics, the queen, whatever, and that's what in the fourth season of Bridgerton you can see the Maid's Rebellion. If you're following the Bridgertons, my wife has boxes full of the original Bridgerton books, and anyway, now I'm addicted to Bridgerton. But I just want to, if I could just read a couple of paragraphs from Dialogic Imagination, because I want to challenge um, you all to read the book. I sent you out a PDF of the book for free in the invite. So let's just start with sort of parsing out what BAKHTIN means by some of these chronotopes. And I think he's doing it in the same way that you're doing your dissertation, Kassandra. Taking text, analyzing text for the space-time chronotopes. Right. So, or time space, as he puts it. So the everyday life chronotope, first is a romantic chronotope, and it's kind of like Bridgerton. They're dressing in gowns. They want to have a love affair, and they have all kinds of false ideas about what the man or the woman is going to be because they don't really know them. They're sitting down with a chaperone, and the thing unfolds. So the romantic one is very much in your head. It's a very fantasy illusion of relationships. But if you go into next the everyday chronotope, what I think BAKHTIN is pointing out, I'll just read something here. The everyday life that Lucius observes and studies is an exclusively personal and private life. By its very nature, there can be nothing public about it. So he's differentiating the public and the private. So which of those is authentic? Is it the private life of the entrepreneur that's authentic, or is it the public life of the entrepreneur? So that's a question that he's raising. So in the everyday chronotope, it's the private life. And you can't see the private life of another person. It's like in Tomorrowland, you can't see into some other room. You didn't grow up in that room. You didn't experience that room. You experience your own experiences. So it's a private life there. When you go a couple pages later, and I was reading from page 122, 128, in this everyday maelstrom of personal life, time is deprived of its unity and wholeness, and it is chopped into separate segments, each encompassing a single episode from everyday life. The separate episodes, and this is especially true of the inserted novellas dealing with everyday life, are rounded off and complete, but at the same time are isolated and self-sufficient. So to me, that's a direct definition almost of anti-narrative historicizing, rehistoricizing into this fragmented, deprived of essential connections. So the private life is moving off and into isolation. Now, if you go into the biological or autobiological chronotopes, who write those, and there's a lot of them out there about entrepreneurs who've written about themselves or people who've written about famous entrepreneurs, those are not what BAKHTIN is talking about. He uses the word autobiographical, but going back to Bridgerton in season 4, you're looking at how do maids look at these entrepreneurs? How do butlers? How do people, cleaning the bathroom in the offices of the building of an entrepreneur? How do they look at it? How do they look at that person's life? Because they see him naked, they see him dressed, they see them puking and farting. They see the part of the private life that's not articulated in the public life. So the entrepreneur, for example, is manifesting a narration of their public life for reputation to attract whomever, investors, reputation, etc., for deals and shares. But the private life, and my dad was an entrepreneur, I can tell you the private life is completely different than that public life, completely. So that tension just explodes the whole idea of authenticity, because it's not really about that. It's about a dialogical understanding. It's about different points of view brought into intersection. So that's why he needs a number of different chronotopes to make it happen. So if you go from the romantic to the everyday to the biographical, yes, those are all adventures, but they're adventures of a very different sort in the public-private dualities. you know, and then you move on to the other chronotopes, as Betty was mentioned. And I was really glad to see that you have these chronotopes, and I'll just be quiet, but I'm just going to say that the book has much answers to the analysis that you're doing, you know, and wandering around reading people in AMJ or AMR probably is going to lead you astray because they haven't read the book. Oh,
Great. I know that, well, we cut off Paul, and then Wanda has her hand up, but Cassie would like to respond. So,
I love you, Dave Boji. I feel like you reading that book is exactly been my entire struggle around writing this dissertation. Because here's the truth, and no one's gonna like it if they really want to know about chronotopes. I am not actually, these are not actually fully representative of the chronotopes. And this is what I think I've been trying to convey that I'm not sure that I'll be able to convey without confusing everybody who would be reading this dissertation and without like sabotaging my career because nobody can understand me if I talk that in that beautiful way that you just spoke. I love it. I feel like I need a whole nother paper to be able to get to exactly what it is that you just read. That is the way that I understand them. So, what I did instead, hopefully, you guys don't hate me for it if you love the chronotopes, is what I did instead is I just like did this little scratchy surface of chronotopes that you could use only for the sake of framing narrative identity, only for the sake of shaping authenticity and legitimacy evaluations. So just to hopefully like everyone take a breath. I'm not ruining the chronotopes like all the other AMJ authors. Hold on a minute.
okay,
Whew.
you misinterpret. I think you
No.
did it. I think you did it.
Oh, you do?
I
I
think you
feel
cracked the
so
code.
underwhelmed by it.
I think you cracked the code in exactly appropriate ways. So I
Oh,
don't
good. Okay.
think
Well,
that
I
you
feel
didn't. I'm saying you did and
okay.
take credit for it.
Oh, okay. I
Okay,
think
so
I've done this
because what are
twice
you doing?
now.
You're saying that this Olympic event, here's this person rebelling, taking a knee at the event. Okay. And what are you doing? You're not like isolating on that person. You're doing a relational analysis of the audiences to that person and their typifications of it, which brings you right into Bakhtin's dialogic, you know? So I
So,
think
okay, well, that's good. That makes me feel good because I feel like there's so much more to talk about.
and that is all the more reason to dig into the source text and continue to hone what you're doing. But the like you have overlaps in your final bit on of how they're constantly collectively on going on, and you've got the audience dialogic. Of course, there's more that could be gotten to. Maybe I don't know. I don't have reports from Kaepernick's housekeeper, but certainly looking at how people respond in the comments directly, or how they've created these intertextual linkages that create this dialogue has been very good. And of course, there's always more, right? Like, all right, so I'm going to go in reverse order. Sorry again, Paul. Wanda.
I have just a quick question. Are chronotopes how we frame rhetorical narrative of the event, or our narrative space that it occurs in?
I think Betty would like to respond to that, if that's okay. Oh, you're muted, Betty. Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, I actually wanted Paul to be able to go first, but I do have a response to that. It's space-time for a reason, Wanda. It can't only be the narrative, can't only be the time. It's the way they fit together. I remember, oh, and to Kassandra, I want to say something you've definitely heard more than once. Your point is not to match or stick to the original chronotope idea, is to make it move along, you know? And if you're going to contribute to what dialogics are all about, it would be good if you address that question. How do you correspond to and not correspond to the typical idea of chronotopes? We hope you don't just give us one more time a definition that people already know. So don't ever apologize because you've evolved to something else. That's part of your job and your value. Got it? Yeah. Paul, I'm dying to know what you wanted to say when I first joined.
Everything, everybody's already talked about it. Oh, what is a chronotope? What does it mean? It means what it means. I hear intersubjectivity, dialogic imagination. We keep making up our reality as we go. And the information that Rabelais, I'm jumping back, that Rabelais was a doctor, a physician. I didn't know that. And he wrote this crazy stuff as a doctor and said, oh, the doctor who becomes intimately aware of human bodies. And well, this is a serious issue. And it's also hilarious because the human body has all this craziness attached to it. We can get really dramatic about, I'm not a doctor. I go to the play. I look at somebody perform or act, and I say, wow, how wonderful this is. What I ain't seeing is, oh, they go off the stage and then they're a regular human being like me. They take a bath, they take a shower, they eat supper, they take out the garbage, whatever. And this chronotope framing of what's going on right now. How do I fit into the ongoing whatever? How do you fit into the ongoing whatever? How does he, she, or they? I can't make sense of this. The way to make sense of it is to create a story that makes it make sense. And I don't have a story, so let's see, can I borrow here? Let me go read Dostoevsky or Leskov or somebody, Charles Dickens. And the more I read all of these people, read writers writing about human behavior, I get these stories about why people are the way they are and why they do what they do. When you said cultural anthropology, I suppose that's what cultural anthropology is. Oh, why are people doing what they're doing, and how did they come to this reality? And we're always asking that all the time. If I look at all of you, I hope I'm not being obnoxious. Well, how did you all wind up here today? And why are you here? And they go, my God, Brian's story, Wanda's story, Ronnie's story, Sabine's story, Cassandra. I have gotten some input now over quite a bit of time with the people in the room. And I think I have some ideas about why you're all here, but I'm not sure. There's multiple reasons. It's this multiplicity, the polyphonic reality of we want things to be simple, and we make them simple because that's what we have to do in order to not be just overwhelmed by nothing makes sense, nothing fits together. We have to keep making sense of, we have to keep interpreting it. The word interpretation and framing. What I do when if I take my camera, if I take a photograph of somebody, what am I doing when I take a picture? I'm framing the reality that I'm in. Let's take a picture of the tree, the mountain, the sunset, or the people at the party. Why do I do that? Well, I now have some information about what they are, maybe why they are. But if I really want to get into the why, I need to have a conversation with them. I'm going to be quiet now.
That was a great real life mind expansion that we just saw there. Like that's like this is my PhD right now. Like that's what it's like I'm like this is Cassie 2.0, Cassie 3.0. Like it just keeps going. Yeah, you got to keep talking to crazy people.
And we're coming up towards the end. So, Brian, your comment, and then David can close us out.
Okay, I'll be quick. This is maybe kind of on the edges of what you're talking about, but it's something I think a lot about in context to chronotopes is, do you ever consider how this may have actually been from a story old? The example would be in the Old Testament of the Bible, it was very clear that blessings or curses would be carried 4 generations forward. And we're simply describing it anew and differently today so we can connect to it more, better, or different. I don't know. I have no research to go with that question or exposition at the end, but I just think that chronotopes have always been here, and we're just exploring them scientifically instead of from the true stories which they hatched. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts or if I'm just out in the woods by myself.
Well, that's fun. That's something to let boil, I think, in the back. I think we could talk about next time, Brian. That's cool. David.
Okay, so Cassandra or Cassie, if we could call you Cassie, I don't know. You could call me Davy. That's what they called me when I was a little. The page 84, just read a couple of sentences that as I find if I hear it's what I'm reading, I can understand it. So just jump here. In the literary artistic chronotope, spatial and temporal indicators are fused into one carefully thought out concrete whole. Time, as it were, thickens, takes on flesh, becomes artistically visible. Likewise, space becomes charged and responsive to the movements of time, plot, and history. The intersection of axes and fusion indicators characterize the artistic chronotope. I think it's important that although BAKHTIN gets the word from Einstein, and he says here the term space time is employed in mathematics and was introduced as part of Einstein's theory of relativity. The special meaning it has in relativity theory is not important for our purpose. So he's taking an artistic approach to chronotope, not a literal or even a quantum approach to it. And he's talking about the process, in the first sentence, the process of assimilating real historical time and space in literature has a complicated and erratic history, as does the articulation of actual historical persons in such a time and space. So what I get from all that is I think your thesis is exactly on point. That it's got a rhetorical history. By rhetorical history, it's not the history, it's not a history, it's a relationship that's dialogically implicated of a bunch of histories that are being fashioned out as our hero in your dissertation does his deed. As all the audiences react around it, surrounding it with their own interpretations, not only of the history, but the future, the relevance, the politics, the justice, the audacity, that all is implicated in your chronotope. So I think it's pretty clear in the book, aho. And I hope you come back.
Thank you so much, David. That is absolute gold. And the sort of thing that just lays in the back of your mind when you make connections and then you bring that home. Anyway, I love you, David. Wow. Well, folks, out of respect for everyone's time, I think we should allow this to end for now. And I look forward to seeing everyone next week. And can we all just say thank you to Cass for bringing us her thoughts?
Yeah.
Thank you for
Thank
having me.
you.
I've been asking to be a part of this. I wasn't expecting to be a part as in this way, but that's okay.